Hello po, magandang hapon. Greetings from Holy Land. Ito po ang inyong kaibigan dito sa bansang Israel, si Minerva Dorante, ang isang OFW, isang caregiver. Kaya ko nga may sounds, parang wala akong marinig na sounds. Okay na ba yun? Hello kay Tribong Maligalig Official. Magandang hapon po sa aking mga palangga. Ay, meron siyang ito. Kumusta, Team Happy? Mega love shout out. Today is March 3. Isang tulog na lang. Birthday ko na. Kumusta po tayong lahat? Naka-move on na ba tayo sa init na nangyari kahapon sa senatorial debate sa SMNI? Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. And Annalie, dumadami yung Team Happy, no? Annalie Pinonggan. Hello po kay Annalie Pinonggan and kay Inelra. Sisi, magandang gabi. Sisi ko, Josephine Batchoco. Kumusta ang pakikipaglaban natin? So, grabe yung kaganapan, no? Inulit ko siya kasi nag-live tayo kahapon. Okay ba yung Okay ba yung sounds? Hello kay Rodelio Perez. Kasi nag-live tayo. Ayun, okay naman yung sounds natin. So, tanggalin na natin ang ating Bluetooth. Mega love shout out kay Rodelio Perez and kay Georgina and kay Manilyn. Naku, nag-comment na naman ako kasi may masamang espiritu doon. So si Espiritu, sinapian, no? Sinapian siya ng kakaibang espiritu. Mega love shout out, Tribong Maligalig Official. So wala tayong akala ko di ka nalalabas dyan. Kanina ka pa ba nakaabang? So, sabi ko kasi iniisip ko, ikakabit ko ba yung B8 o hindi? Kaso seryosong usapin to eh. Wag na akong mag-B8 kasi pag naka-B8 ako, nagiging comedy. Parang di naman comedy, no? Kahit walang B8. So para maiwasan natin kumanta, huwag muna tayo mag-B8 kasi pasadahan natin ang mga kalokohan ni Espiritu. So, and hello po kay Inelra. So ngayon ay babalikan lang natin ang medyo hindi magandang nangyari sa senatorial debate kahapon sa SMNI, kung saan ang isang candidate for senator ay nagpalabas ng espiritu niya, nakakaiba. Na sabi ni Gadon, don't forget Gadon, and Attorney Gadon po for Senator, and syempre si Harry Roque. Nagalingan ako ng bonggang-bongga kay Harry Roque kahapon. So, pasadahan pong muli natin. At dito sa sinasabit, isinisigaw ni Espiritu na ituro daw sa mga bata. Ang pinag-uusapan kasi doon, yung parang ibababa yung edad para makasuhan yung mga parang kriminal, yung mga bata na gano'n. So, sabi ni Attorney Gadon, dapat hindi lang sa magulang ang pagtuturo ng magagandang asal, dapat pati rin tong mga simbahan na to, mga pari na to, pinagsasabihan din kasi wala na silang ginawa, pati sa simbahan itinuturo ngayon yung, 'di ba? Nakita niyo ngayon yung kumakalat sa sa TikTok na yung ginagawa na nilang yung sa simbahan, di ba? Lenny, nagagaganan sila sa simbahan. Tama ba yun? Parang hindi na siya karapat-dapat, no? So, hello po kay Arnold Candelon. Supalpal kay Attorney Gadon ang masamang espiritu ni Joma Season. Buti na lang mo na andun nga si Attorney Gadon. And then talagang, alam mo yun, parang gusto nang sumugod ni Attorney Gadon para sabihin, bobo ka ba? So meron pa siyang nalalaman na on the record daw na sa Amnesty International. So mabuti rin dahil nakalkal ito ng isang anti-Marcos. Dahil sa dami ng manonood niyan, makakapanood niyan, di maliliwanagan po ang mga anti-Marcos. Hello kay MB Makulit TV. Mega love shout out po sa lahat, sabi ni MB Makulit TV. So minsan ang pagkakataon ay nagiging pabor sa taong walang kasalanan. So, binuksan niya ang mga martial law victim daw, kuno. Ito ang record, ganun. So, sabi ni Gadon, nilitis nga yan sa Hawaii, napawalang kaso nga yan, dismiss nga yung kaso na yan, di ba? So, sabi din naman niya kay Harry Roque, di ba ikaw, anti-Marcos ka? So, nung mabigyan ka lang ng pwesto sa Uniteam, ngayon, nagha-hallelujah ka na kay Marcos, sabi ni Espiritu, no? So, balikan natin ng konti. Mega love shoutout po sa inyong lahat. At dito ay ipi-play natin ang isang lumang video ng ating Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos nang siya ay in-interrogate. So, ating babalikan ito bilang paglilinaw sa mga anti-Marcos sa kanilang paninira at paggamit sa black propaganda na ito.
Interpolation from Attorney Roque, that would be 45 seconds.
Kung ano man ang nangyari sa nakaraan, inilista ko po ang records, wala pong kaso for human rights violations sa Amerika si Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Inisa-isa ko rin po ang mga kaso na decided po ng ating Philippine Supreme Court. Totoo po, co-administrator si Ferdinand Bobo Marcos, wala pong kaso na siya mismo nagnakaw.
Then I have Attorney Espiritu has 30 seconds for rebuttal, and we have a question again from Dr.
Thank you.
So with all,
You have the time. You have the opportunity, Attorney Espiritu, for a 30 seconds.
My microphone is being silenced all the time when I do my rebuttal.
Yes. Yes, Attorney Gadon, you may now interpolate with Attorney Espiritu.
And I also agree na dapat bigyan natin ng tamang values sa mga kabataan. Dapat tinuturo sa school na masama ang extrajudicial killing, masama ang red tagging, masama si Marcos, marami siyang human rights violation.
I disagree.
Yung panahon...
Okay.
It's still my time.
We'll go back to Attorney Espiritu first to finish his 20 seconds.
It's still my time. Don't be rude.
Thank you. Attorney Espiritu, you have your 20 seconds left before you were interrupted.
Dapat tinuturuan natin ang kabataan na respetuhin ang buhay, ang human rights, respetuhin ang buhay ng lahat at hindi dapat pumapatay ang ating mga gobyerno. At hindi nagnanakaw ang ating gobyerno. Diyan tayo magkakaroon ng mga mabuting henerasyon ng kabataan. Dahil sa social problems na create ng ating lipunan. And I also agree na dapat bigyan natin ng tamang values sa mga kabataan. Dapat tinuturo sa school na masama ang extrajudicial killing, masama ang red tagging, masama si Marcos, marami siyang human rights violation.
I disagree.
Nung panahon...
Okay.
It's still my time. 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 It's still my time.
We'll go back to Attorney Espiritu first to finish his 20 seconds.
It's still my time. Don't be rude.
Thank you. Attorney Espiritu, you have your 20 seconds left before you were interrupted.
Dapat tinuturuan natin ang kabataan na respetuhin ang buhay, ang human rights, respetuhin ang buhay ng lahat at hindi dapat pumapatay ang ating mga gobyerno. At hindi nagnanakaw ang ating gobyerno. Diyan tayo magkakaroon ng mga mabuting henerasyon ng kabataan.
Thank you. Attorney Gadon, you have 45 minutes for your interpellation. Yes. Yes, Attorney Gadon, you may now interpolate with Attorney Espiritu. 45 seconds.
Yeah, palagi na lang pinopoint out niya, palagi nilang sinasabi yung human rights violations ni Marcos. Unang-una, sino ba ang nagpapatay dun sa mga NPA na gustong sumurrender? Di ba si Joma? Bakit ninyo sisihin si Marcos?
Attorney Espiritu, you have 30 seconds
Sino
for your
ba
rebuttal.
bumomba sa Plaza Miranda?
Yes.
Sila Joma.
Okay. I'll go by the
Bakit nyo isisisi kay Marcos yun?
It's my time.
We should not use this forum for a propaganda against the Marcoses. It was intended.
Yes. Attorney Gadon, your 45 seconds is over. We have 30 seconds for Attorney Espiritu's rebuttal.
Binuksan mo ang usapan, wag mo akong pagbawalan. I go by the record, Amnesty International, 3,257 ang pinatay nung panahon ni Marcos. 35,000 ang mga... It's my time, wag kang bastos. It's my time. 35,000. 35,000 ang tinorture. 70,000 ang kinulong. It's a matter of record.
Thank you. 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Noong nagkaroon ng kaso sa Hawaii, yung 10,000 human rights victims, nung ini-implement nila dito, nag-file sila ng petition sa RTC, wala silang naipresentang ebidensya. Pagdating sa Court of Appeals, wala rin. So asan yung sinasabi nila yung human rights violations na yan?
We have
Dismissed yung kaso.
interpellation from Attorney Roque. That would be 45 seconds.
Kung ano man ang nangyari sa nakaraan, inisa-isa ko po ang records. Wala pong kaso for human rights violation sa Amerika si Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Inisa-isa ko rin po ang mga kaso na decided po ng ating Philippine Supreme Court. Totoo po, co-administrator si Ferdinand Bobong Marcos, wala pong kaso na siya mismo nagnakaw.
Can I have Attorney Espiritu has 30 seconds.
So mabuti rin po na na-open ang usapin na ito. Siyempre maraming nanonood, marami po ang magkakaroon ng pag-aalinlangan. Sino sa tatlong ito ang nagsasabi ng totoo? I mean, dalawa lang kasi Gadon and Harry is for Marcos and si Espiritu ay isang anti-Marcos. So ang sabi ni Espiritu, meron daw Amnesty International record. So ngayon, aalamin natin ang Amnesty International record na sinasabi niya. Dahil napakaraming pagkakataon na kumakalat yung mga video na ito ay gawa-gawa lamang nila, yung mga nag-claim ng mga martial law victim daw sila. So dati po noon, sa kada isang lugar ay magki-claim ka na ikaw ay isang martial law victim at makakatanggap ka ng pera. So ito po ay hindi isang chismis dahil maraming nagpapatotoo. So kung ikaw sa panahon na yun ay talaga namang hikahos sa buhay at namatayan ka pa, hindi ka ba magki-claim na sasabihin mo, okay, isang martial law victim din ako. So it's around $1,000 ata ang matatanggap that time. So pinaliwanag na rin niya ni Chavit Singson nung na-interview siya ni Christian. Sabi niya, paano mangyayari ito? Merong mga medical certificate, etc., etc. So sabi madaling gawan yan lang paraan, mga ganyan-ganyan mga certificate na keso namatay ka sa baril o binugbog o kung ano, pero namatay ka naman as in parang yung sa sakit o gano'n. Dahil nga, dumami ng dumami. So ang ano dito, bakit walang, nung hinahanap na yung mga nag-complain, wala naman, di ba? Walang naipakita sila. So mayroon pong isang interview si Ferdinand Marcos sa channel ba yun? So babalikan natin ito. So mega love shoutout po kay Bongdi. Napasukan siya ng masamang espiritu, sabi ni Bongdi. And mega love shoutout po kay Moms 1979 and kay Raibin Tabuyan. Hello po, Thomas Cabanis, mega love shoutout. Sila na masama, di ang Marcos, ang lolo ko at lola ko. Maganda ang pamumuhay dahil kay Marcos, sabi ni Raibin Tabuyan. At napakarami po na nagpapatotoo na ngayon na naglalabasan, di ba? Siguro parang God will din ito na itong mga taong ito ay binuhay pa ng Panginoon para pag dumating yung pagkakataon na ito ay makapagpatotoo na ang martial law ay hindi talagang masama na nangyari. Masama ito sa mga tao na sila yung kumakalaban sa gobyerno. Natural lang yon, maparusahan ka dahil ikaw yung nagpapasimuno ng kaguluhan. Ikaw ang kumakalaban sa gobyerno, dapat ka lang parusahan. Di ba? So sino ba yung mga pinarusahan na yon? At sino ba nga? Sabi nga, di ba sila Joma ang nagbomba diyan sa Mindiola ng bakit ang sinisisi nyo si Marcos? Bakit ang sasabihin nyo na mamamatay tao si Marcos? Samantalang ngayon lumalabas na rin yung mga video, mga lumang video ng mamatay ang mga Aquino, nagkalat na ngayon yung mga video na napapanood natin. Nang sabi ni Marcos, disperse the crowd without shooting them. So, hindi si Marcos ang mismong nag-utos para pagpapatayin kung may namatay man. At sa isang ganyang sitwasyon, kung hindi po may iwasan na talagang may namamatay na isang civilian or siyempre di ba sa laban, sa giyera. So, balikan lang natin si Ferdinand Marcos. Mega love shoutout po sa inyong lahat. Hello po kay Lloyd Allen, Roxanne TV Maricel. Hello po mga palangga, salamat sa inyong suporta. So, kaya paulit-ulit ko po itong isinishare bilang concern ko rin sa mga tao na sobrang galit sa mga Marcos. Sabi ko, kakamatayan na lang ba natin yung galit sa Marcos? Hindi ba masarap mabuhay na wala kang hinanakit o galit sa Marcos? Dahil wala ka pa naman nung panahon na yon. Binulag tayo ng panahon ng Aquino. Binulag tayo ng mga libro. Binulag tayo ng mga TV or radio na papanood natin. So ngayon, ilalabas natin si Ferdinand Marcos dahil sa kagagawang ito ni Espiritu. Sabi po ni Alvin Lising, yung pong tito at lolo ko, binigay sa kanila ang lupa nilang sinasaka noong panahon po ni Marcos. And sabi ni Blanca Magada, huwag iboboto ang hindi sumusuporta kay BBM. Nagwawala na ang mga jablo. Ingat po tayo, sabi ni Blanca. And sabi ni MB, seryoso ba tayo, host? Para alam ko. Oo, seryoso tayo. So, alamin natin kung meron mang ganap na Amnesty International na sinasabi ni Espiritu. Itong si Espiritu ay naturingan.
It has been reported that the
sa-
government will seek to
Dali. Ngayon ay napatunayan na si Espiritu ay isang marites na attorney na kalaban ng mga anti-Marcos. Dahil ang sinasabi niya ay meron daw record ang Amnesty International about dito sa mga biktima na ito ng martial law. So pakinggan natin ang in-interrogate si Ferdinand Marcos.
Tanggap. Ang SDO ay isang anyo ng panilinlang at
Ay, no trespassing pala to. Ito po yung mga Hacienda Massacre, Hacienda Luisita Massacre, Mindiola Massacre. Kinalikot ko pong lahat yan para naman masabi sa inyo na bakit yung pagmamamatay tao laging si Marcos. Bakit si Aquino, yung kanilang kamatayan dun sa mga pinagpapatay sa Hacienda, sa Mindiola, bakit yan? Hindi nyo masabing kasalanan ba yan ni Marcos din? So, ito po si Marcos.
$2
$2 billion in rent from the U.S. for the Philippine bases. Is this an accurate report?
No, it is not. We have never talked about figures.
We can understand the question.
The question was, is it correct that we have demanded 2 billion in the rent? The answer is no. We haven't quoted any figure. What we have asked is this. We want a study. What is it that is necessary in order that we can perform our job? You and I know that if the Philippines is attacked, the United States is not necessarily bound to immediately react because the provision of the Mutual Defense Pact is that you will immediately take steps as is necessary to meet the contingency in accordance with your constitutional processes. What does that mean? That means that you go to the Senate and the House of Representatives. What does that mean? That means delay while we are dying there.
most of our allies in Europe concerned about resisting communism give the U.S. free bases and even share the cost. Why shouldn't we expect the same kind of cooperation from the Philippines instead of demands for more rent?
Well, for one thing, you haven't exactly paid for what we lost in the last war. If we must make an accounting, 75% of our cities were devastated in the last war. We lost 1 million men. Shall I quote you the statements of Roosevelt and MacArthur that every Carabao will be paid for? Shall I tell you that the veterans who were inducted into the USAF, the United States Armed Forces of the Philippines, of the Far East, your armed forces, were paid only 1/2 the salary of your soldiers? Shall I tell you that we almost turned communists because you refused to recognize us? Shall I tell you that I had a difficult time stopping my guerrillas, 25,000 of them from joining the communists, because precisely you sort of forgot that we had done the fighting for you, you know, and we were parts of your armed forces. But in fairness to the American Congress, when we came here and we called attention to the fact that we had been abandoned and forgotten, they themselves in outrage immediately passed a law recognizing the services of the Filipino and reinstating them as parts of the United States Armed Forces in the Far East, including back pay and benefits. That, Madam President, is the answer, in addition to the fact that those people that you are talking about have been making money at the expense of the United States for quite a long time, while we have not.
After the attack on Pearl Harbor, U.S. bases in the Philippines could not be defended. Why should we expect that in another war these bases would be more reliable?
That's one of the questions that I wanted to find out.
Is it true President Reagan has not raised with you any concern about repression and human rights?
Well, he sort of spoke of the fact that we have all this constitutional provision. But we did speak of the fact that we must maintain and enhance human rights in general. But this fault finding that we found in some of these reports before isn't there. There is this open-mindedness and fairness which we expected of America and the Americans. The Americans that I know, the Americans who fought beside me, the Americans who bled with me in many a battlefield, was a fair man. He was a just man. He was a courageous man. He was a man who saw right and did right. And it is not fair to accuse the Philippines of any violation of human rights when there has been no violation. Though if there has been any violation, we punish those who have violated. And I now ask that this particular writing of one of the most celebrated figures, who claims to have, at the beginning of the campaign against my government, claims to have been maltreated by some of the military men, now reports exactly what happened. I asked that my staff distribute the letter of Herrera, Trinidad Herrera.
You have indicated that the allegations about political repression and human rights are overblown. How then do you explain the findings of the international independent group Amnesty International, which documented cases of torture, disappearances, and illegal detention?
Well, I'll tell you that the Amnesty International has never come to the Philippines. That's why all they talk about is something that they obtained hearsay. Let's give one specific example. Father Abedicio, a famous case. Father Abedicio is supposed to the Philippines of any violation of human rights when there has been no violation. Though if there has been any violation, we punish those who have violated. And I now ask that this particular writing of one of the most celebrated figures, who claims to have, at the beginning of the campaign against my government, claims to have been maltreated by some of the military men, now reports exactly what happened. I asked that my staff distribute the letter of Herrera, Trinidad Herrera.
You have indicated that the allegations about political repression and human rights are overblown. How then do you explain the findings of the international independent group Amnesty International, which documented cases of torture, disappearances, and illegal detention?
Well, I'll tell you that the Amnesty International has never come to the Philippines. That's why all they talk about is something that they obtained hearsay. Let's give one specific example. Father Abedicio, a famous...
So ayan, so ano ang sinasabi ni Espiritu? Na ayon daw sa Amnesty International report, ay ganito ang mga namatay, ang mga nadukot, ang mga sinaktan, ang mga etc. Balikan nga natin to. So, wala naman pala, hindi naman pala pumunta sa Pilipinas ang Amnesty International na yan. So, paano silang nakapagbigay ng mga report? So, gawa-gawa, marites-marites, naturingang attorney si Espiritu, kasamahan din siya nila Guanzon mga attorney. Attorney ni yan si attorney Lugaw, yan, mga palibasa, mga makakaliwa. Kakahiya, no? Naku naman, attorney ka pa naman. Tapos may sarili kang may sariling report. Hello po kay Alvin Lissing. Sinabi niya na walang kaso si Ferdinand Marcos Jr. sa human right violation sa ibang bansa. Nakakaloka sila. Ganun-ganun lang nilang paglaruan yung mga tao. Pilit na inililigaw. So maganda rin yung nangyari sa SMNI pag lumalabas yung mga ganitong usapin.
Criminal responsibility. Naniniwala po ako na dapat panindigan natin ang obligasyon natin sa yung karapatan ng mga kabataan. Hindi po dapat ibaba sa 9 ang age of criminal responsibility.
Dito yan nagsimula eh. Paano natin huhubugin yung mga kabataan?
Naniniwala po ako na ang utak ng bata is still in the process of development until they hit at least the age of 15. And until that time, we should exert all efforts to reform and to show the right path to all children. Kakamatay lang po ng aking matandang dalagang tiya na nag-alaga sa amin, and she was really a pioneer in advocating for the rights of children in conflict with the law. Yung separate detention center po, siya ang nag-push niyan, and I think that should be implemented on a nationwide basis. At pangalawa po, kinakailangan talaga na maging proactive po ang ating DSWD in the rehabilitation. I am also part of an NGO, Onesimo, that seeks to rehabilitate young people. It can be done po. Walang bata na pinanganak na masama ang budi.
Thank you. Attorney Marcoleta.
Kailangan po ay magsimula ang bata, ang kanyang values ay sa pamilya. Kailangan po nating suportahan ng legislation kung paano mapapalakas ang pamilya para ang kanyang moral values ay maging karapat-dapat sa lipunan. Kailangan din tumulong ang ibang institutions like the church and the schools. Ito po ay napakalaking responsibilidad sapagkat bago pa po makagawa ng criminal offense ng isang bata, mapigilan na natin yun. At ang pinakamabuting paraan ay yung masuheto natin sila, mabigyan ng magandang pag-uugali ng halimbawa para sa ganun ay hindi sila makapunta sa kondisyon na nakagagawa ng kamalian na pagsisisihan sa habang buhay. Kaya nga po napaka-importante ng legislation. As a matter of fact, the family is one of those state's policies enshrined in our Constitution, and therefore we should support this by way of legislation. The institutions must help the family resolve this problem of juvenile delinquency.
Thank you. Attorney Gadon.
I'd like to ask this question first for Deputy Speaker. May plano po ba kayong gumawa ng batas na papanagutin na po ba ang mga magulang itong mga bata na?
If life were like web design and things just stopped working.
Naging offenders po.
To a certain extent, yes ma'am, because kailangan po talagang gwardyahan ng ating mga magulang ang mga bata. Marami po kasi ako nakikita ang mga instances na kung saan ang mga bata ay napapariwara dahil na rin sa kakulangan ng guidance ng mga magulang. Sa ganitong mga sitwasyon, kailangan po magkaroon ng pananagutan ng isang magulang para makita niya na importante ang mga anak sapagkat sila ating puhunan sa kinabukasan. Kailangan po nila itong panindigan sapagkat sila nauunang may responsibilidad para sa kanilang mga anak.
Attorney Gadon.
Tama naman na responsibilidad ng mga magulang ang pagbigay ng values sa mga bata. Pero ganun din ang Catholic Church. Marami sa mga pare na sa halip na magturo ng leksyon sa mga bata ay ang inaatupag nila ay yung mga anti-Marcos, anti-martial law at mga communism ang kanilang tinuturo. So dapat suwituhin din itong Catholic Church. Wala na kayong ginawa kundi manira kay Marcos, kay Bongbong, kung ano-ano mga kalukuhan, mga martial law kayo, mga pari kayo. Dapat ang ituro nyo yung kagandahang asal, hindi yung pabungulitika.
Attorney Olarte.
A child below 18 and above 15 should be presumed to be a child with a mind that belongs to the minority age, the minority group. So if this is the case, they should not. They should be given more rights by the law. Now, the blame should rather be given to the parents who just abandon their children, neglect their children, begging on the streets, and child abuse. I think the parents should be held responsible.
Mr. Albani.
Sa ngalan ng Diyos na sa imawain, matunungin mapagmahal. Ang juvenile problem natin dito, nakikita ko po, hindi po problema ng magulang lamang. Ang problema ito po, kailangan i-handle din ng government. Hindi kasalanan ng mga bata na sila ay mahirap, hindi kasalanan ng pamilya na sila ay naghihirap. So the government, we have to do something, made a very good program paano maiangat ang kanilang kinabukasan. Bakit nagawa ng ibang bansa? Ang programa ng ibang bansa from home to tomb. Bakit hindi magawa ng bansang Pilipinas that we are the richest country in the whole world? So dito, kailangan po alamin natin ang problema, hindi lang problema ng mga bata. Kailangan magsimula ang pag-aaral dito sa kanilang bahay, which is the core values, papunta sa paaralan, at bigyan natin ng magandang pondo ang lahat ng mga teacher dito sa Pilipinas. Kung kailangan, dublihin natin, alang-alang sa bayan na ito.
Thank you. Attorney Espiritu.
I agree na hindi dapat binababaan ang age of criminal responsibility. I disagree na dapat parusahan ang mga magulang. Tandaan natin ang krimen dito sa baba ng ating lipunan sa mga mahirap ay dahil sa social problems na create ng ating lipunan. And I also agree na dapat bigyan natin ng tamang values sa mga kabataan. Dapat tinuturo sa school na masama ang extrajudicial killing, masama ang red tagging, masama si Marcos, marami siyang human rights violation.
I disagree.
Nung panahon...
Okay.
We
Attorney Gadon, you have time
It's
for
still my time. It's 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 still my time.
We'll go back
It's
to
still my
Attorney
time.
Espiritu first to finish his 20
It's still my time.
seconds.
It's still my
Yeah.
time. Don't be rude.
Thank you. Attorney Espiritu, you have your 20 seconds left before you were interrupted.
Dapat tinuturuan natin ang kabataan na respetuhin ang buhay, ang human rights, respetuhin ang buhay ng lahat at hindi dapat pumapatay ang ating mga gobyerno. At hindi nagnanakaw ang ating gobyerno. Diyan tayo magkakaroon ng mga mabuting henerasyon ng kabataan.
Thank you. Attorney Gadon, you have 45 minutes for your interpellation. Yes. Yes, Attorney Gadon, you may now interpolate with Attorney Espiritu. 45 seconds.
Yeah, palagi na lang pinopoint out niya, palagi nilang sinasabi yung human rights violations ni Marcos. Unang-una, sino ba ang nagpapatay dun sa mga NPA na gustong sumurrender? Di ba si Joma? Bakit ninyo sisihin si Marcos?
Attorney Espiritu, you have 30 seconds
Sino
for your
bang
rebuttal.
bumomba sa Plaza Miranda?
Yes.
Sila Joma.
Okay. I'll go by the
Bakit nyo isisisi kay Marcos yun?
It's my time.
We should not use this forum for a propaganda against the Marcoses. It was intended.
Yes. Attorney Gadon, your 45 seconds is over. We have 30 seconds for Attorney Espiritu's rebuttal.
Binuksan mo ang usapan, wag mo akong pagbawalan. I go by the record, Amnesty International, 3,257 ang pinatay nung panahon ni Marcos. 35,000 ang mga... It's my time, wag kang bastos. It's my time. 35,000. 35,000 ang tinorture. 70,000 ang kinulong. It's a matter of record.
Hello po kay Riz Life. Magalang shoutout kalabs Riz Life. So may sinasabi siya dun sa Amnesty International, no? At sinabi na to ni Ferdinand Marcos na hindi nangyari na pumunta ng Pilipinas ang Amnesty International. So sabi ni Gadon, bakit hindi nyo tignan yung mga pinatay ni Joma? Di ba yung mga NPA nasusuko na sana, pinagpapatay po yun. At marami pang iba na nag-claim na sila ay martial law victim. So silipin nga natin yung mga munting alaala ng Hacienda Luisita Massacre.
Ang angkap ng lupa. Sa pagpapatupad nito, nawalan ng karapatan sa lupa ang mga manggagawang bukid. Ang asyenda ay isinailalim sa land use conversion o pagpapalit gamit ng lupa na nangangahulugan ng malawakang tanggalan sa trabaho at pagpapalayas sa mga mamamayan ng asyenda. Simula nang ipatupad ito, mahigit 500 manggagawa ng azukarera ang nawalan ng trabaho. 1 hanggang 2 araw na lamang sa isang linggo ang trabaho ng mga manggagawang bukid. Sa arawang sahod na 174 na piso at 50 sentimo na mababa pa sa minimum wage, 9 na piso at 50 sentimo na lamang ang natitira dahil sa dami ng kaltas at utang.
Sinasabi nilang trabaho, pagdating ng Kabyaw, ano lang.
Hello po kay Philip Julius Manios. Thank you po for coming to my live stream. Ganyan si Sir Larry Gadon, tirahin mo ng tirahin. So ito yung sa Luisita, no? Sa Hacienda Luisita na nangyari. Gusto ko yung sa Mindiola eh. Nasaan ba sa Mindiola Massacre? Kasi laging ang tapon, mamamatay tao, Marcos. Si Marcos ba? Nag-utos na patayin yung mga tao na yan? Di ba hindi naman si Marcos? Bakit naging mamamatay tao si Marcos? Kakalungkot, no? Tapos bandang huli, si Marcos ang mamamatay tao. Sabi ni Alvin Lising, pakana pala ng mga Aquino yan para isisilang kay Marcos. Opo, totoo po yan kasi naglalabasan na po yung mga tao na sasangkot sa pambobomba na yan. Pero laging ang sisi ay sa Marcos. Kasi galit sila sa Marcos para lang maging masama sa mata ng mga tao ang Marcos. Subalit ngayon, marami na pong nagigising sa katotohanan, sila mismo nagre-research sila. Kaya panawagan po natin dito sa mga iba na sobrang galit pa rin, katulad ni Espiritu, Ano kaya, magigising pa kaya to sa katotohanan si Espiritu? O talagang masama lang yung Espiritu na nakapaloob? Saan kaya ako dyan? Di ko makita. Nandyan ka rin, RJ Gaming. Sabi ni Bongdi, sumani bang Espiritu ng 2 joints kay Espiritu? Ganun. Sa ipagpatuloy natin ang interrogation kay Ferdinand E. Marcos sa lahat ng tanong sa kanya. Tapusin na lang natin yung video na to bilang paglilinaw po sa mga naghahanap ng katotohanan. So mabuti sa ngayon at naipapanood natin itong mga video na ganito. Dati hindi po yan mapapanood.
Cardinal Sin, when he arrived in the Philippines, appeared before some of our friends and said, look, there's no quarrel between the church and state, and the church and state are separate. I have 1,502 issued at his instance alone? No. They are issued at AFO and other sources, and who have bragged openly in the television when they are caught that they were the leaders of these rebel groups, and who later changed their tone on the advice of their lawyers, went to the Supreme Court and were able to obtain an order from the Supreme Court for the Philippine government to bring the bodies of these people to before the Supreme Court, which we did. There is not a single man who has filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus who has not been able to compel the government to bring the body of all those petitioners to the Supreme Court. In fact, the Supreme Court ordered an investigation on the allegations of torture, and the results were negative. The doctors testified that they examined all of these persons, all these petitioners, during the period of confinement, and they never complained about any mistreatment or torture. And some indiscreet remark indicated that this was merely said on the advice of the lawyer as a preparation for defense in the criminal trial. Now let's review overall the overall measures. All measures that have been issued by the president were issued at his instance alone? No. They are issued at after a meeting of what is known as the party caucus. You who have studied constitutional law know that in a modified parliamentary or presidential form of government, the president actually doesn't make the decisions. He may lead the party, and therefore in the caucus, he may exert influence in the caucus, but the caucus decides what is going to happen, what is the policy to be adopted. In fact, our Constitution institutionalizes this procedure and states that the program and policy of government shall be adopted by the cabinet, submitted to the president for approval, but shall be responsible to the members of the National Assembly or the Batasang Pambansa, and for which the Prime Minister must stand. If he is rejected, then he must quit, he must resign, and a new Prime Minister must be appointed. Now, over all cases are appealable to the Supreme Court, including cases of security against the state. We have a system of local government and administration throughout the country. In all, there are 73 provinces, 60 cities, 1,502 municipalities, 42,000 barangays, in each of which there are regular elections. Barangays are the villages. We just had elections this year. The election for president occurred in 1981. Under the Constitution, the people have a right of recall. They can recall anyone who has been elected by 1/5 of all the voters who voted in the last elections. A vote of 1/5 will suffice to call a new election for any given post. The legislature and the president or the executive work together. We cannot afford any stalemates. We cannot afford any delays. It is a modified presidential form of government, while yours is a complete and pure presidential form of government. Why did we change this? Because we cannot afford stalemates and deadlocks. Yours is a strong economy and a military power. Ours is a weak country. We cannot afford to delay and postpone decisions pending the debates between Congress and the President or the Prime Minister. The poorer third world countries cannot. And so, my friends, that is the situation. I am now going to ask also that my staff distribute to you the social and economic indicators of my country in showing to you the dynamism and the vitality of our economy. We have changed our economy such that we hope to be able to be self-sufficient. We were importing rice before. The last time we imported rice was in 1976, 77. We paid $500 million for that price. Today, we are exporting rice to our neighboring countries. And the per capita income was about $200. Now, it is more than $800 per capita income. The gross national income has increased 5 times.
Ang galing kaya, no? Imaginin mo yon, yung gross income nag-increase ng 5 times. So merong continuation yung senatorial debate kahapon. And pinakita ko lang po ito dahil para paglilinaw dito sa kay Espiritu na sinasabi na may record daw po ng yung sa martial law, sa Amnesty International.
Thank you.
Na pinaliwanag dito ni Ferdinand Marcos na hindi po pumunta sa Pilipinas ang Amnesty International. So gawa-gawa lang po to ng mga makakaliwa.
He was a man who saw right and did right. And it is not fair to accuse the Philippines of any violation of human rights when there has been no violation. Though if there has been any violation, we punish those who have violated. And I now ask that this pamphlet, particular writing of one of the most celebrated figures, who claims to have, at the beginning of the campaign against my government, claims to have been maltreated by some of the military men, now reports exactly what happened. I ask that my staff distribute the letter of Herrera, Trinidad Herrera.
You have indicated that the allegations about political repression and human rights are overblown. How then do you explain the findings of the international independent group Amnesty International, which documented cases of torture, disappearances, and illegal detention?
Well, I'll tell you that the Amnesty International has never come to the Philippines. That's why all they talk about is something that they obtained hearsay. Let's give one specific example. Father Abedicio, a famous case. Father Abedicio is supposed to have disappeared. He is a member of the clergy in the Philippines. He's a Filipino. He disappeared and we couldn't locate him. Not even my best intelligence officers could locate him. And what did we discover after 6 months? We discovered he had run away with somebody who claimed to be a nun, and he was in Germany. How do you like that? And we got blamed for it. We got blamed for it. That's it. That's how the Amnesty International has been reporting all this thing.
This questioner says, I have been in Manila and talked with both Filipino and U.S. businessmen. They say the Philippines are the most corrupt nation in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and that your wife's nickname is Miss 10%. Will you comment?
They must mistake us for another nation. He must have been living in the bar. Because I can tell you, there is this man, Justice Pamaran, whom I just introduced to you. He is the ombudsman. You who know what an ombudsman is, knows exactly what he can do He doesn't wait for evidence. Any rumor whatsoever, and he investigates it. You talk about my wife. Not that I would like to defend her. She can defend herself any time. She's quite capable. But perhaps that statement was said of another first lady, not my wife. Certainly not my wife. Perhaps I can tell you that the property of the Marcoses has been brought into a blind trust. And not a 2020 blind trust either. It's a real blind trust. And we don't know exactly how that blind trust operates the property. The only property that we have control of are two or three houses, one in the province of my Ilocos Norte, no, two in the province of Leyte, and one in Manila, 5. Then the schooling for the children, up to possibly a doctorate. Beyond that, all income goes into the Marcos Foundation, which is the foundation that embraces all property. Do you think that if there was any corruption by the Marcos family, that we can maintain the present prestige and leadership of the Marcoses in the Philippines? What do you think the Filipinos are? They are a very literate people. Literacy in the Philippines has increased up to 90% nationwide, and in Manila it is 100% literacy. And if there was any indication whatsoever of any of these corruption that you talk about, and whoever said that sounds like he has been in the wrong company. Probably the guys that he was working with may have been engaged in corruption. I'd like to know who they are. Then we'll go after them. But I can assure you, if any public official engages in corruption, he will land in jail. That is definite.
What do you say to critics who say your health is poor and you won't be around very long, but your wife may be?
Anybody want to try me in the ring? Yeah, that's ridiculous. I refuse to answer questions like that.
Two related questions. You are indeed a family man. Your wife, your daughter, your brothers are all government officials. Do you think the next president of your country will be a Marcos, and would you like for your wife to succeed you as president?
No, no. The problem here, of course, is that one, you do not understand the Philippine politics. You see, first of all, my brother, did you say my brother was governor?
Government officials.
My brother volunteered his services for Medicare. Did you want him to withdraw his voluntary services as a medical officer? He is serving our country practically free, abandoned a very profitable medical career in order to serve what we have as Medicare, which is your Medicaid, no? Yes. He is not a government official by any means. This is a voluntary organization. My wife was elected. He was elected because the candidates wanted to include him, to include her. They wanted somebody to carry them. Minister Romulo will tell you that without the support of the governor, who happens to be well liked by the people of Manila, they probably wouldn't have won in the last elections. It's just a matter of helping out in the political campaign. My daughter is the voluntary head of a group of village leaders. That is not a political organization. That's not a government organization. This is an association of young kids who are organized in order that they can help each other. Kabataan Barangay. And I am surprised that you hold it against these young kids, that they get together so they can play football, they can encourage sports, they can encourage people, the young kids from going into drugs. Don't you think that you should also organize something here in the United States and get somebody to stop the young kids from going into drugs and instead go into sports? Well, that's what they're doing. Now, with respect to the other officials, the question, of course, doesn't specify. Let me put it this way. As I told you, our government is a caucus government, consensus. When the consensus of the party demanded that I appoint the First Lady as a member of the Executive Committee, I had an agreement with them, and that is that she would not become President or Prime Minister. At the beginning, even Prime Minister Cesar Berata was for the First Lady becoming Prime Minister. But the First Lady and I stood our ground, and we nominated the Prime Minister Berata instead. Now, is that the action of anybody who is preparing to take over as a dynasty? Now, my other daughter, well, she is in Pennsylvania. She's studying voice culture, and she is in anthropology. I don't see what connection that has with politics.
Mr. President, your opponents say this trip is costing between $5 million and $20 million. What is the budget for your trip?
It's ridiculous. My cabinet is spending only a very minuscule part of that. If there are any people who have joined this group, they are on their own. I'm sorry to say. They're on their own.
Natatawa lang ako dun sa yung tinatayuan, bababa yung babae, tapos aakyat si Ferdinand Marcos. Dapat pa ganun talaga yun. Hindi mo pwedeng nandun na lang din yung babae para hindi na bababa, para may stage sila doon na gano'n no? Bababa tapos aakyat din si Ferdinand Marcos. So pinakita ko lang po ito para doon kay Espiritu na sinasabi na may record daw ng Amnesty International ng mga di naman pwede sumagot ng Tagalog, nosblida, abo din ni Lugaw. Uy, napapansin mo si Lugaw? Si Lugaw laging Tagalog yung mga sagot na, no? Kaya siguro may English din siya, pero kung ang magtatanong sa kanya si Professor Carlos, baka mapagalitan siya ni Professor Carlos. Kaya hindi uma-attend si Lugaw. So pinakita ko lang po ito, yung lumang video ni Ferdinand Marcos, para lang po para pabulaanan yung sinasabi ni Espiritu na mayroon daw na amnesty record ng mga biktima ng martial law, ganon. So, pati yung nakakalkal ang mga lumang video tuloy ng Pangulong Marcos dahil sa mga kalokohan nitong mga anti-Marcos na are. Magpapaalam na po tayo in 5 minutes.
Sino ba bumamba sa Plaza Miranda?
Yes.
Ha? Sila Joma.
Okay. I'll go by the
Bakit nyo naisisi kay Marcos
I thought it's my time.
We should not use this forum for a propaganda against the Marcoses. It was intended.
Yes. Attorney Gadon, your 45 seconds is over. We have 30 seconds for Attorney Espiritu's rebuttal.
Binuksan mo ang usapan, wag mo akong pagbawalan. I go by the record, Amnesty International, 3,257 ang pinatay nung panahon ni Marcos. 35,000 ang mga... It's my time, wag kang bastos. It's my time. 35,000. 35,000 ang tinorture. 70,000 ang kinulong. It's a matter of record.
Thank you. 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Noong nagkaroon ng kaso sa Hawaii, yung 10,000 human rights victims, nung ini-implement nila dito, nag-file sila ng petition sa RTC, wala silang naipresentang ebidensya. Pagdating sa Court of Appeals, wala rin. So asan yung sinasabi nila human rights violations na yan?
We have
dismissed yung kaso.
We have interpellation from Attorney Roque. That would be 45 seconds.
Kung ano man ang nangyari sa nakaraan, inisa-isa ko po ang records. Wala pong kaso for human rights violation sa Amerika si Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Inisa-isa ko rin po ang mga kaso na decided po ng ating Philippine Supreme Court. Totoo po, co-administrator si Ferdinand Bobong Marcos, wala pong kaso na siya mismo ang nagnakaw.
Can I have... Attorney Espiritu has 30 seconds for...
Ito yung sinasabi ni sino ba yon? Yung may junior, 70,000 kinulong, saan kinulong? Sino yung nagsasabi kanina na bakit ang sinasabi ni Roque ay si Junior? Kasi ang ibig sabihin ni Roque, kung ano yung inirereklamo nila, hindi yon si BBM. Kasi hindi si Bongbong Marcos Jr. yung dapat na pag-usapan ngayon. Kasi hindi naman tumatakbo si Marcos Sr. Si Bongbong Marcos ang Jr. ang tumatakbo bilang presidente. So bakit sasabihan nyo ng magnanakaw at saka mamamatay tao? So kaya chinek niya ni Roque, kinalkal daw niya ang record. Wala naman daw record na nagnakaw si Bongbong Marcos Jr. At wala daw record na pumatay din si Marcos Jr. So bakit ang pinipilit nyo ngayon, black propaganda, huwag iboboto si Marcos dahil mamamatay tao at magnanakaw. So walang record si BBM ng pagpatay at ng pagnanakaw. Kaya parang ganun yung gusto iparating ni Roque siguro. Kaya nasabi niya na walang record si Bongbong Marcos Jr. ng pagpatay, walang record ng pagnanakaw si Bongbong Marcos Jr. Yun siguro yun. So ganda talaga ni Attorney Karen Jimeno. Sa'yo na ako, Attorney. Ayaw ko na kay BBM. Sa lawatan itong si RJ. So yun lang po ang ating senior bilang sa mga, kasi naman yan mabubuksan ulit yan. Kakalkalin na naman yan ng mga dilawan. No, ayan si Attorney Espiritu. Sinabi niya, ganeri karami, 70,000 yung nakulong. Saan daw ikinulong, sabi ni Bongdi. Kasya ba yung 70,000 sa Bilibid nung time na yon? You never heard it, sabi ni Bongdi. Di ba? Mapaggawa-gawa sila. Naku, yung mga nalolokong mga tao nito, sadyang mga maloloko na sila for life. So, ganun na lang sila. So, hello po kay Eduardo Sardido. Bravo, Attorney Gadon and Attorney Roque. Note to masama kay Espiritu. Thank you so much po. Napadaan po kayo kay Eduardo Sardido. So, maraming lalabas pa yan na medyo panlaban sa mga Marcos sa mga susunod na araw hanggang dumating ang halalan. Kaya tayo mga BBM and Sara supporters, Marcos loyalist, bantay lang po tayo. Salamat sa mga video na nakakalkal natin bilang patotoo na pagsalungat sa kanilang maling ikinakalat. So yan lang po muna ulit tayo sa araw na to. At tuloy-tuloy ang laban hanggang sa May 9. Alam naman na natin na panalo na si Bongbong Marcos pero patuloy pa rin ang paninira nila. So andito lang tayo para maglinaw dun sa mga tao na sobrang galit sa puso sa mga Marcos. Tama na po, mag-move on na po tayo. No? Para na po ito sa ikabubuti ng ating bansa at ng ating mga kapwa Pilipino. Hiwatan na natin ang galit sa mga Marcos. Wala po siyang maitutulong sa sarili nyo at sa bansa natin. Kung kayo'y mamamatay na may galit sa Marcos, hindi rin po ito maganda para sa kaluluwa nyo. Di ba? So mas masarap magbuhay ng walang galit. Okay, galit kayo kay Marcos, manahimik, huwag niyong iboto. Hindi na kung ano-ano mga pinagsasasabi nyo ng mga wala namang mga ebidensya. Para lang siraan ng mga Marcos. So, hello po kay RJ na naandyan parate. Salamat ng marami. And kay Tribong Maligalig. At sa inyong lahat, kay Sisi Josephine, haharapin natin si Mayor Treñas. May lumabas ngayon, nag-PM sa akin, taga Samar. Hello. Hindi ko babanggitin ang kanyang pangalan dahil natatakot siya. Sabi po ng aking kaibigan, lagi lang siyang nanonood sa akin. At sabi niya, sa Samar, totoo po, na angkat, sandali asa na, lumabas ka be, huwag kang matakot, hindi kita papangalanan. Eto, ang sabi ng aking kaibigan, ang mga kapatid daw niya, ay pamilya ni, ang bahay nga, sandali lang dito, simulan ko dito. Ang haba na eh. Nakakalungkot lang. Solid BBM kami. Ang bahay nga namin mukhang headquarters na ng BBM supporters. Basahin ko lang Bea, pero hindi ko i-mention yung pangalan mo. Taga Northern Samar po siya. Kasi ang Catholic school daw sa kanila, lahat daw po yan ay mga pinklawan. Pati po ang government employees ay mga pinklawan. Pero ang kapatid niya ay mga BBM lang doon, pamilya niya ay BBM, pero tahimik lang po sila. Kasi nang-aaway nga po ang mga pinklawan. So, totoo po yung ating ibinalita. Naku, dyan na naman si Lola. Lola, Rega! Rakda ka, stop there. Stop there, Lola. Dali. At Lola Leget, Rega, rakda ka.
Isang araw, isang
Anilip
linggo.
tawak, Delet.
Tapos sasahod yung mga tao, 950. Sa ngayon, mahirap talaga. Lalo na nagkakasakit yung mga anak ko. Gusto namin pagamot sa labas, wala namin ng pera. Sa loob ng mag-apon, 2 beses kaming kumain, minsan kamote.
Minsan yan ang trabaho namin, yung mga parol, kung wala pang mabenta, hindi, wala kami pambili ng bigas.
Pag nakatubo ng 100, meron na kami pambili ng sabon, tsaka kalahating salop na bigas. Yun lang ho.
Matagal na ako rito, wala ko rin nakikita sa trabaho. Mahirap talaga. 29 years, wala pa rin.
Parang nalalanta na kami. Lalo na ngayon, kung hindi magtinda ng mangga yung anak ko, wala kang pambili ng kalahating bigas.
Talagang masikip. Naramdaman ko ngayon. Hindi ko alam kung saan akong kukuha ang pagkain ng mga bata. Yun lang, ganun, sa kumukuha na lang kahoy. Sa bukid na lang.
Pinahigpit ng aping kalagayan ang pagkakaisa ng 600 manggagawa sa ilalim ng Central Azucarera de Tarlac Labor Union at mahigit 5,000 manggagawang bukid sa ilalim ng United Luisita Workers Union. Sa kanilang collective bargaining agreement, tampok sa mga hiniling nila ang dagdag na sahod, dagdag na benepisyo, dagdag na araw ng paggawa para sa mga manggagawang bukid, pagpapawalang bisa ng SDO at pagpapatigil sa land use conversion. Pero sa halip na tugunan ang mga makatarungang kahilingan, dagdag pasakit ang sagot ng mga kawangko. Upang durugin ang unyon, 326 na kasapi ng United Luisita Workers Union ang tinanggal sa trabaho, kabilang ang Pangulo, Pangalawang Pangulo at 7 opisyalis nito. Sila'y naghanda. Ika-6 ng Nobyembre taong 2004, sabay na itinutok ang welga ng Katlo at Ulbo. Itinigil nila sa Grade 1 at Grade 2 sa Central Azucarera de Tarlac. Karahasan ang kagyat na tugon sa kanila. Sa unang 2 araw pa lamang ng welga, tinangkang bunutin ang mga welgista sa kanilang picket line. Subalit binigo ito ng pagkakaisa ng mga manggagawa at manggagawang bukid.
So ikumpara natin, no, Aquino at Marcos, sino ang totoo at sino ang tunay na mamamatay tao at sino ang magnanakaw talaga. Diba? Sana magising na rin po yung mga marami dyan na anti-Marcos. So yan po muna tayo sa araw na to. Maraming salamat po at ingatan nawa tayo ng Panginoon sa tuwina at samahan tayo sa laban natin ito. Ito ang inyong kaibigan dito sa bansang Israel, si Minerva Dorante. Paalam po, BBM and Sara tayo. Gadon and Harry Roque tayo, Marcoleta at sino-sino pa, si Ligarda. Gawa na tayo ng list ng ating mga senator. Maraming salamat po kay Dick Mariano. Gago din niyang si Espiritu. Dapat sinabi kung saan ikinulong. Dapat sinabi kung saan hospital din nila yung na-torture. abogadong puro haka-haka. Sabi ni Dick Mariano, oo nga po, Dick Mariano. Isa siyang legit na marites. Si Attorney Espiritu. Naturing ang mga attorney yan sila. Ingat ka po, sabi ni RJ. Ingat din po, RJ, and kay Sisiko Josephine Batchoco. So tara na, at tayo magliwaliw na uli. Maghahanap naman tayo ng mga mapapanood. Bye! Keep safe and God bless everyone. Lihit raot!